Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. My name is Alessandra, and I am from the philosophy department at UAlbany. So what I'm going to talk to you about, and hopefully we'll have also interactive part. I'm going to ask you to work in groups, but it's going to be, the topic is a little bit different from a lot of what we've done this morning, right? So I'm going to take a kind of a broader scope. And I think it fits with this workshop and with this symposium simply because if we're in higher ed, we care about, educating, and we care about students getting something out of their college experience that can be useful as they go on with their life and they develop into adults and citizens, et cetera, et cetera. So I think having some room to think about the issues having to do with ethics and what it means to use AI ethically and to make ethically relevant decisions with AI, using AI as a tool, I think it's important. Let me know when I can. Okay. So to begin, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction here. Most of you know already these things, but AI is not just generative AI. Large language models, the things that we've talked about mostly this morning, are kind of the shiny new toy in the AI world. But AI was around long before that. AI has been used for data analysis, so data collection and data analysis and data representation, and to gain insight into data sets for a long time. And it's been changing the way we do a lot of things long before, ChatGPT now is changing the way we teach and learn and educate. AI is used in business, science, healthcare, finance, insurance, everywhere across the board. And this is due to, these applications kind of follow this kind of philosophy. There's like a principle behind all of this, this is my way of phrasing it. Basically, the idea is the more data we have about the past, the more accurate predictions we're going to be able to make about the future, the more successful our decisions based on such predictions will be. So that's like the guiding principle of how AI is being used for a long time in all those domains and beyond. But there are problems, obviously, and I'm here to talk about AI ethics. So this is where I'm going to start a transition to things that are not as great, maybe, because whenever you have extremely large data sets that combine several sources, then you are more likely to have poor quality data that sneak into it as well. Machine learning algorithms contain biases. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the issue of algorithmic bias and AI bias. And some of these biases may be fixable. Some of them may be inevitable just due to the very nature of how these systems are designed and what they're doing and how they see the world, how they classify things into categories, et cetera, et cetera. Moreover, data collection and curation practices, this is something that people have been starting to say more explicitly and look into it more systematically in the past, let's say, 5 to 10 years. Collecting data sets and preparing them to be read and processed by algorithms needs a lot of practices, or relies on a lot of practices that have some exploitative, discriminatory, and just socially and politically deeply problematic sides to them as well. And last but not least, and this is just a very small sample of the problems that generally there are in these contexts that people think about when they think about AI, the connection between data and reality, because AI processes data. Data are a representation of reality, but the relationship between the reality that underlies the data and the data set that you get from reality is not fully specifiable, and it's unsystematic, and it's not necessarily the case that you gain some knowledge from analyzing a data set, and that just automatically translates into some knowledge that is applicable to the real world. This is also a big, limitation of making decisions using AI. And as the title of my talk mentioned, solutions to these problems can come from a variety of places. There might be technical solutions. Some problems may have technical solutions, do have technical solutions, like increasing interpretability, for example, with algorithms that are like deep neural networks that are like black boxes. If you increase interpretability, that's usually a good thing. Oh, I was trying to keep an eye on the time. I'll just check my phone. You can be sure to train the algorithm properly, and that usually includes clearly separating and not having contamination between, for example, the training data set and the testing data set at the level of the training before the algorithm is actually deployed and applied to real problems. You can increase the size of the neural net, which is basically what big corporations like OpenAI, Google, et cetera, can do, because they just have a bunch of money that can be thrown at building more and more powerful computers and have billions and billions and billions of parameters for their neural nets. But other problems may not have, and do actually, I'm going to show you that do not have, or I'm going to try to convince you that they do not have purely technical solutions. It's not just about making the algorithms better as algorithms. There's something else going on here. And what I personally interested in most is that making decisions with the help of AI tools is particularly problematic in what I call ethically charged contexts. What I mean by that, this is a tentative definition, again, that I made up myself. An ethically charged context is a context in which a decision has some ethically relevant implications, and or the rightness or wrongness of a decision depends on ethical or moral considerations. So using AI as a tool to help you in decision-making in these kind of contexts can be problematic. And the bottom line is technical solutions here are not the type of solutions that you may want to look for, or that you might expect to make things better if you are, making decisions in this kind of environments. Why do I say that ethically charged decisions escape purely technical solutions? Because, and this is the philosopher in me finally coming out, is that the domain of the ethical, what we consider ethical, the domain of ethics, is fundamentally connected to an idea like the idea of human flourishing, which cannot really be specified in purely technical terms. Because flourishing is always relative to a situation. It's like a combination of factors, sociopolitical, economic, cultural contexts, but again, in non-systematic ways. These factors provide or create situations for each and every one of us, actually. It can go down to the very single individual as a specific situation. And all these factors interact with each other in nonlinear and unsystematic ways that make it really, really hard to even represent what a situation for a person might be from the point of view of an algorithm, or to represent it so that it can be taken into account by machine learning. Also, flourishing involves possessing certain capabilities, but also possessing these capabilities depends on one situation. What it is to possess a capability depends on someone's very concretely grounded situation. So even the formulation of these capabilities, even the formulation of flourishing as an objective is very complicated and maybe not even entirely possible. So the approach I'm interested in, and what I want you to sort of think about for the rest of the talk, I'm basically done with the slides, is to think about how AI has been or is going to affect capabilities that humans have. And I use this term capabilities in kind of a technical way because it refers back to the so-called capability approach, which is a framework that philosopher Martha Nussbaum and economist Amartya Sen came up with together, or they developed different versions of this approach. Sen was more interested in finding alternative measures to measure a country's economic power or economic wealth, versus Nussbaum was more interested in theories of justice. And so she uses this idea of the capabilities to build some kind of theory of what it is for a society to be just, is for its citizens to be granted and to have certain capabilities. So I would like us to think about the fact that using AI to assist with decisions that, like I said, ethically relevant decisions, so decisions that impact human life at the level of the basic conditions that produce flourishing or that enable human flourishing, is permissible only insofar as we get clear on how exactly, or at least as exactly as we can, we get clear on how AI can and is impacting this idea of flourishing, and in particular, the different capabilities. And making sure that AI is indeed compatible with human flourishing requires understanding human capabilities. I kind of already said that, both negatively and positively. So what I want you to spend some time now thinking about and discussing with each other is how AI and different types of AI have impacts or have the potential to have really transformative impact on human capabilities, both negative impact and positive impact. So maybe we can try, this is the activity that I would like you to do now. So maybe since the chairs move around, maybe we can form groups of like 4 to 5 people. Maybe like try to be so that you can be next to each other. And I'm also going to open breakout rooms. And of course, I'm going to give you a handout. John, can you help sharing the PDF version of the handout in the chat? Thank you. So I have a copy of the capabilities. There's only one per group. So this is a list of how Nussbaum phrases the fundamental capabilities. And you have the activity up there. Sorry. This is a list of capabilities. There's only one per group because I wanted to save paper. So
I'm not doing it. You're not allowed to ask ChatGPT, right?
You are allowed to ask ChatGPT. You're allowed to do research as however you want, in the sense that
Is there a specific one we're supposed to focus on?
you pick whichever one with your group. You guys can pick whichever one you resonate the most with, or there's actually a few extras. Maybe I can leave one. Maybe the bigger groups get an extra handout. Pick one. Yeah. The one that you feel you have more to say about it, maybe, or something. There's some extra.
So we didn't pick one?
Yes.
Wait, so we just
pick one? You just pick one. Yeah.
Do we choose our own or?
Yeah, why don't you pick your own? Just pick one, because I wasn't sure how many groups there were going to be.
Okay.
And for the people on Zoom, they're going to go into breakout rooms and do exactly the same thing. And the handout should be in the chat. Great. Yeah, just assign automatically,
Yeah, yeah, I was just wondering.
although some people are gonna be
Oh,
alone in their rooms.
yeah.
There's not a lot of people, maybe
Let's go back and redo that.
do fewer rooms.
Yeah, let's, sorry. Come on. Let me get back to the control. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I thought there were at least two. So maybe 6 rooms, 7 rooms.
Yeah, as long as there's like 3 to 4 people per room.
She'll come back.
It's gonna close automatically.
Okay. One more time. So we're going to, recreate. We're going to,
No, I think you should just do it from the beginning,
that's what
like,
I'm thinking, recreate and
Oh, okay.
let's go down to 6.
okay,
That should be good.
Yeah. perfect,
Okay.
okay, great, thanks. It's gonna.
Understanding assessment, reflection, right, or policy. That was either good or bad.
I figured John would want to manage it.
It's just peeking in.
Yeah, we haven't started.
Imagination and thought.
Oh, nice.
Doing that like that.
I'm not sure. I haven't asked. I'm just starting to.
Okay.
Which one did you pick?
Practical reason.
That's a good one.
So I think that, able to go over the experience. Something to allow the interaction.
Which capability are you discussing? Which one? Oh, play. Yes, that's fun. Were you able to come up with AI adjacent technologies that impact, influence that capability?
So like augmented reality, virtual reality.
Right. That's allowed.
So that there. I guess well, you could claim that, yes, mimicking human interaction, average, involve encompasses all of them, it encompasses. The word is more precise into
Somebody, which is what that movie Verb was about, right? Is that he became so, entranced with the interactions he had with the AI that he began to use in contact with what real, what not.
So I put sort of, emphasizing the tool into the facility of the facility.
Which capability did you pick?
We're looking
Oh,
at
emotion, yeah. Oh, the,
I think that mimicking him.
Yeah, I guess it's like, in some ways, it provides a safeguard for risks that there aren't serious risks, but in other ways, there's risks that because you want creativity or like thinking in a different way. And
That's the problem. A lot of people are protesting and just want to get into the homes and stuff like that.
oh man, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope they,
So there's, you got 16 people who are just sitting in, they don't know.
uh, that's okay, we'll,
Should have said it automatically, send them in.
I hope some of them are getting something out of it.
Yeah, well, there,
And we'll come back to it
Yeah.
with everybody for like kind of a discussion afterwards.
sorry about that.
So, yes.
Because the other people think,
There's only one room that's being joined.
so we're, so let's move into room 2. And whoever is in room 5, well, not 5. Oh, well.
Go to your room. I'm gonna give you all about 5 more minutes and then we're gonna share what we have. I see a lot of things popping up in the chat.
Okay, I was talking about it.
Okay, great.
So. I would know.
So what is one way to?
Okay.
Right. And then go down like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm caught. Well, I thought it was a good registration. I'm just kind of, if I can, yeah,
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Let's all come back here. The people on Zoom should be out of the breakout rooms as well, or very soon they will be. So I really want to hear from you and hear what you came up with. So remember, the exercise was to pick a capability in the list that I give you, and then first come up with a way in which you can sort of imagine, or you can see AI impacting that capability right now already. And then once you have that, it should be kind of pretty easy to imagine how the trajectory, how this impact might be going in the future. Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? And so the other two things that I wanted you to think about were, in what sense this impact can be positive? What's an example that could make that impact positive overall? What could be, on the other hand, an example of that AI affecting that capability might actually end up being very bad for humanity? So let's hear it. Did anyone do the first capability? What about on Zoom? Did anybody talk about the first capability? just shows the, I'm not sure what that,
Oh, that was a prior chapter.
oh, okay. Okay, well, let's go one group at a time then, and then we're gonna get to the ones on Zoom. So this group right here, which capabilities were you guys discussing? Also, can I ask maybe if you have like a spokesperson to come closer to those mics, because otherwise people can't hear you on Zoom.
You were our spokesperson, but it might, the mic isn't accessible to our spokesperson. Yeah,
I can also kind of rephrase, or maybe you can,
Actually, wait.
let's see if we can rearrange. I'm just gonna rearrange it.
there you go. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that we discussed is that AI in the environment can both be bad and good, right? As an environmental chemist who uses AI in research, it can be beneficial in that it can be providing predictive concentrations of contaminants or at-risk populations in a given environment, but it can also work negatively because I've actually seen things in real life with real communities in Western New York where banks and other places have an unknown algorithm that if they hear about pollution in the newspaper, they start putting that area through this algorithm, and that will determine how much money they will underwrite for these properties. So even though we might have data that says this area isn't contaminated, but area B is, they will blanket the whole area, and that actually could be negative, right? And AI is only as good as we make it. So you gotta remember that you need the data to build the model. And if you don't have the knowledge to make sure you're making the right ethical choices, if you just wanna put it into a computer, there's no way to really control that, right?
Right. Yeah, and there's the whole, so it was the other species, like more with respect to the environment.
Well, just
Number
10.
10, controlling the
Oh,
one's environment.
right.
Controlling material.
Yeah, I don't fully remember them by heart,
So,
but
yeah.
yes,
like, so materially, people can have their
I'm actually gonna
their
borrow it.
property values dropped artificially because some algorithm says it's contaminated, but there's no real data. They're not using scientific data to determine it. It's just if they see an article or they have a concern, they put it through this algorithm.
Yeah,
And they don't know what it's contaminated with, to what extent. I've seen homes that have dropped from $57,000 to $1,500 in value when there was a concern about environmental pollution in that neighborhood.
yeah, and there's the problem of whether this concern is well grounded
Right,
and does
exactly.
correspond to reality, or if it's
Exactly.
just a feature or some kind of
Because
artifact of
banks-
the way data are
Right.
aggregated
So
and
banks
collected.
don't actually have soil sample data for the pit. They just assume, well, if somebody says it is, it must.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing, overconfidence
Right.
in these models and in the technology, and trusting the people that are supposed to collect the data and organize them and curate them to actually do a good job doing that.
Well, it's very useful to augment research, but it doesn't take away the burden of the scientists.
Right. Absolutely. What about the group over there? You guys were doing the senses, imagination, and thought, right? Yeah. That would be great, but even just close enough, I think.
Sean Moriarty from Oswego, and Gary and Emily also from Oswego. And actually, my talk, they don't know where I'm going with that. But my father was Professor Moriarty, okay, and he had some sayings. He was. And he had a couple sayings, and one of them was, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And when we talked about our was senses and imagination, and so he would say, well, you should still draw, even if you're not a good drawer. And yet when you use AI, which as you go and learn a skill set around prompting, you can become a good artist and go and use the tool to go and to do that. So for that, you know, you don't necessarily have to go and develop the skills. Now, there's shortcuts, and the bad part of it is that if you go and take all these shortcuts and you don't develop the skills in the area that you need, then you're going to have, you know, we're gonna lose some of the capabilities to go and to do it. One of my dad's other sayings was, everything you do at the expense of something else. And one of the concerns could be the more we go and spend in these immersive environments, then we go and lose the time that we spend in nature and walking through the forest and developing all of our other capabilities and senses. So there.
Yeah. Yeah, great. So basically there is all these like creativity enhancing tools now, like image generation, or even like writing tools, writing aids, stylistic way, like AIs that allow you to write in all sorts of different styles and compose music in all sorts of different styles. And it's good in some way because it allows you to be good at things that maybe you wouldn't be able to be good at. But yeah, I agree. There is value in struggling with things and maybe even failing, because that's what's truly human. Like there is no real sense in which these machines fail or can do things badly. That's another thing that doesn't get talked about often, like the difference between when we do something and we fail, there's still a sense in which we're doing something, maybe not as well, or maybe not the thing that we were supposed to do, but something comes out of our efforts nonetheless. With machines, there's really nothing, like once the machine fails to do what you commanded it to do, what is left is just garbage. It's just not working. Well, for humans, anything that we do can be described in so many different ways that even if it looks like it's a malfunction in some sense, it's still nonetheless something that we've done and some kind of abilities that we've applied to that thing nonetheless. It might just not be what we expected to. The end result might not be what we expected, but it's still a result. Great. What about this group over there?
Yeah.
Right. Hi. One of the things we talked about, I was thinking about the context of higher education. And I was thinking that we live in a society which claims to be individualistic and to value really distinct free individuals, but that especially in the higher ed space, there is actually invisibly a lot of conformism, and that this is particularly true, not just for students who come from relatively privileged backgrounds, but especially for students who are of color or who are queer or present differently, who are physically or mentally differently abled from other people. When they arrive on a college campus, they don't de facto feel comfortable or at ease. And a lot of their experience in negotiating their courses and life on campus has to do with putting a lot of energy into sounding, acting, and living like everybody else. And the problem, and I think this is kind of a problem that is hard baked into the way that AI works, which makes me worried about it, is that AI is structured to give you an approximation of how most people talk about something or behave about something most of the time. It actually sort of makes an implicit argument that what is valuable is really to conform to a norm, right? And when students start to use that in the process of negotiating opportunities for intellectual discovery and for growth and to shape an identity, and they're using this really powerful, very appealing, very low friction tool that encourages them to sound and act and think like millions of other people throughout human history, but also like their immediate peers, I think it has a direct impact on what we've been talking about, human flourishing. And by the way, this is in connection with, what was it called? Practical reason, yeah. Forming a conception of what is good, I think, in a society that is legitimately and authentically individualistic. Part of that individualism has to do with appreciating and cultivating a capacity for freedom and for spontaneity and for being different from others not just willfully, but productively and usefully. And then I worry that because AI has this kind of averaging or blanding tendency as a technology, it actually delivers a much more adverse message in the opposite direction for a lot of students. And they don't even necessarily need to be students in sort of challenged populations or marginal populations. They can also be students who are in relatively privileged positions who may not want to, make the effort or take the energy. So I think that's a real risk.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the risks. I was actually reading a way that another philosopher put it, that AI has this power of choreographing our existences. And I think that the choreography idea is pretty powerful. It's a good image because it's almost like it creates paths for you to move and action possibilities that are already built into the system that are maybe not necessarily what you would spontaneously go for, but just because they're there and they're afforded to you and they're accessible to you, then you just go for it without maybe even reflecting, because you take the path of least resistance, and AI is very good at creating the path of least resistance for as many people as possible all the time. There's also a positive aspect to that, though, which with everything, AI especially, there's really like so many different sides to the coin, something that can really be seen as challenging and negative, like our colleague, I don't think I caught your name, Mike, was saying. There's also a positive aspect to it, though, which is AI can be leveraged to increase usability and accessibility and personalization of paths. So the AI does have, in addition to the conforming tendencies and the sort of flattening tendencies and creating the paths of least resistance, it does also, for the very same reasons, have the potential to, on the other hand, create these opportunities for personalization, so that everybody, once you know what the AI can do for you, then there are ways in which you can sort of take advantage of it in ways that promote your own self-expression and your own specific way of being in the world. But of course, then which side will end up being the rule, which use of AI we will see more and more, will depend not just on the AI itself, and probably not on anyone in this room, but on the people that actually have the money and the power to decide how and where and when these tools will be employed. So there's always that little wrinkle in every discussion. What about the group in the back? I'm going to try and not speak as much because we're running out of time, but I want to hear from everybody and the people on Zoom ideally. So let's keep it short.
Well, yeah, we'll be brief. So we looked at the concept of play and how AI would affect that. And well, we started with the concept of what happens in virtual simulations anyway that we already have. For example, role-playing games. What happens when, instead of a pre-programmed set of responses a character could give you, an NPC, what happens when you have an AI that can change that answer, that can take it in new directions? Maybe not, it has a preset, it can't give you this information so you can complete your quest in the manner you're supposed to, but it can lead you in other directions. It can lead you to other NPCs and give you more of a sense of a dynamic interaction. Along those same lines, talking about interaction. So we discussed what's the downside of these interactions. And when AI comes in more and more and gives us more of spontaneous, in the moment, humanish responses, how much do we look for responses from actual human beings when we can rely on AI, when we can be in a safe environment and play a game without the need of other people? So along with other experiences, we talked about the concept of virtual reality, and virtual reality like rock climbing. What happens when you can get AI involved in that and get an incredibly detailed simulation? And what do you gain? What do you lose? If you cannot rock climb, the cliffs of Dover or wherever, whatever challenge you want to take on, can you do it using AI? But the bad side is what happens if you could take that trip, if you could make that climb and you choose to stay at home and do it instead? We talked about briefly the idea of interactions as far as play. What happens when you don't have anyone around, right? And you want to play and you want to interact. AI, you've got the interaction. Okay. But does it stifle your imagination? Does it give you answers where you would normally come up with a simulation or a game or a fake reality in your head and then put it to work in your life? So that's kind of things that we were looking at. Really, what does it do for interaction? How does it help us? How does it not?
Great, thank you. Yeah, play has changed a lot in virtue of digital technologies, not just AI, but even before AI, compared to how generations before me even played. Okay, we have two more groups. Let's keep it brief. This group right here. I think we started a few minutes late, so we can maybe go for a few minutes longer.
Okay, is this on?
Yes. It's mostly for the people on Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right. Hello, people on Zoom. So we chose to do empathy, emotions. And for item number one, where we thought about what is the problem? Well, the problem is we have artificial intelligence machines mimicking human interaction, conversation, and empathy. In other words, we're anthropomorphizing a tool into a facsimile of a human, right? So then there are both pros and cons of the outcomes of that. What happens is that we have sort of that interaction with the machine replacing interactions with other humans. And at what point does that become such a separation or so difficult to distinguish that we have people who are more reliant on machines than on human interaction? But we really looked as loneliness, for example, as the epidemic of loneliness, as the underlying issue between items 2 and 3. Like, where does it benefit? Where does it harm? And if we think about the fact that, AI with certain tools such as PI.ai, you can now have that interaction that could alleviate, particularly among young people, the loneliness. And also, for example, in Japan, they've been long using robotics to alleviate care, empathy, and loneliness issues among the elderly, that could be one plus side of it, really. But on the other hand, will that further interaction with machines then make people feel even more distant from fellow human beings and then have further challenges in social interactions with other humans? So we really see it as two sides of a difficult coin. And we will have to see where these things go. But we're already seeing, the problem of loneliness, for example. But what AI is not alleviating is the social conditions that underlie what is leading to that problem. And so how do we get to those through the AI as well? So was there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
Nope.
Thank you. Yeah. I would add even like emotional development, like how do you think of this in the developmental framework? How are children that more and more will regularly interact with chatbots and they're going to have AI friends, et cetera, like how do they learn human emotions? How do they learn? Because they're not going to get back the same things that they would get from human friends. And so will that be an obstacle, or maybe they'll just change? Maybe the variety of human emotions will just slightly shift and we'll discover different emotions and we'll become differently emotional, a differently emotional species. Who knows? Okay, last group here in person. And then I would
go, but
I don't know if you can add it because you guys are here.
well, they're here too, but in
Yeah.
any case, I had a frivolous group. I say that because we also did play. So we talked about the possibility of generating lots of new kinds of games that we might not have known about before. That could include sort of discovering new possibilities, including the
the idea of currently at the moment being able to play with novel iterations of ChatGPT and other things. It's just kind of fun. The downside is that what it would come up with might be shallow. It also might alienate certain groups. Other downsides include a loss of self and authenticity when we lose ourself if we're relying on if play is about going to AI to generate that for us, we might lose sight of our ability to discover that within ourselves. One on the really bad category is if there are no safeguards, we could have fun at the expense of others. And there's no reason that AI couldn't become really, really, really good at finding ways of having fun at the expense of others, which of course would be really bad for humanity. That's not so fun, but that's us. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right, how about the people on Zoom? I know that there is if you need to change rooms, go ahead, absolutely. But I would like, before we officially conclude, I would like to hear from some of the people on Zoom. Maybe they have something in the chat that maybe John can read for us, or if someone wants to speak up about some ideas that came up in their discussion.
I can speak to our discussion. This is Christina Kent from Alfred.
Yeah, please.
So the topic that we chose was bodily health. And our discussion was based around kind of the first part there would be, so looking at physical health, it was mentioned, that maybe it wasn't challenging. By using AI, people are often, taking the information they're given, and it's kind of causing some complacency amongst people, not seeking out information themselves. But at the same time, it does kind of prompt for those critical thinking skills that are needed in the healthcare field. So that was discussed. The second part for the second question was basically we figured that it revolutionized healthcare. So with AI, you can do so many more things now. It's helped to give mobility to impaired, some sort of sight to some of the blind, helped with a lot of accessibility issues as well. And I mean, they're even using it in the fashion industry. So it's kind of taken off from there, not just healthcare, but just in general, making things more accessible for others from that sense. And then the bad things could be that, if things were misinformation was given, errors perhaps in some, calculations or formulas in a healthcare situation or a physical body situation could be very detrimental to somebody's health and could hugely impact their life.
Yeah,
so that's the summary for our group.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to stop here. Apologies to the people on Zoom. I'm sure the chat will have interesting things and maybe will be shared with everybody at the end. But thank you so much. And I hope this was helpful. Of course, there's never enough time.